What's up, people? Jay here along with DJ Cass, and we're holding it down tonight for this. I don't even know what to call this show. This is basically, I don't even know what the hell this is. This is us just talking about wrestling. That's what this is. So thank you guys for tuning in. We got a few things to talk about tonight, a few things that have piqued my interest. One of them being, and I didn't even ask you about this before we went on Aircast, but did you check out that Seth Rollins WWE 24 documentary?
Oh yeah, no, you know I did. I don't even know why you asked me that question. As soon as Raw went off, I watched it.
Like as soon as the words like escaped my mouth, I was like, of course he watched the damn documentary.
Yes.
But, yeah, wasn't that awesome?
Oh yes, it was just fantastic. I do like the Daniel Bryan one a tad bit better, but when it comes to like actually seeing an actual athlete's injury and actually going through the process of what he went through, especially like what he does outside of the wrestling business, definitely brought a lot of insight to what Seth Rollins is truly about.
And we're talking about this because of Josh V. He's a longtime viewer of the program, a big supporter, always leaves comments and always interacts with the show. So, you know what? This is my way of showing that I listen, showing that I care. So, shout out to you, Josh. He left a comment saying, would be cool if y'all touched on that Seth Rollins documentary. And I watched it earlier today, and I thought that it was amazing. Just watching Seth Rollins on that journey, knowing that he was injured, just seeing the passion, like the passion that he has for the wrestling industry, it's palpable. You can feel it in the air, and it just radiated from the screen. And as great as that documentary was, I honestly think it was too good. It was too good. Because
you mean, go ahead.
Now I'm pissed off.
Because you want to like you this is a guy who you want to like on screen, but they're not doing it right.
I just want him to be a good character, you know, whether he be a heel or a face. Like, I want the best for Seth Rollins, and what I'm seeing on screen right now, it's not the best for Seth Rollins in any stretch of the imagination. Like, what is that phrase that he has? Rebuild, redesign, reclaim.
Yep.
Something like that. And I am not seeing that play out on WWE TV. All of the passion that he had in that documentary, I am not seeing that on WWE TV.
Because he's scripted.
Yeah, and that's the thing about
he's scripted.
Like, nothing that I'm seeing on TV feels real. And I know this is I know some people are gonna take this the wrong way, but what I'm seeing on TV from Seth Rollins right now is fake pro wrestling bullshit. And what I mean by that is Seth Rollins is playing a character. He's been given talking points. He's been given an objective. I want you to go out here and do that. Everything that I saw in that documentary, that passion that he had for the wrestling industry, that agony that he had on his face, like, you could just tell there were moments where he had to turn away from the camera and he like paused in his speech because you could tell he cared about the business so much, and he was mad about the fact that he wasn't going to be at WrestleMania. He was mad about the fact that he wasn't going to be there to claim his spot as a top guy in WWE. That sense of urgency that he had to get back in the ring, I don't feel that with the character on TV, and it's doing a disservice to Seth Rollins, a disservice to Roman Reigns, a disservice to the feud and the fans.
Everybody. Yeah, I think it's a disservice pretty much not only to the fans but also to the wrestlers, because it's like it goes back to all that realism that we've always talked about on the show, and how like when a character or wrestler talks, if you can relate to that character or that wrestler in any kind of way, then that means that they're doing their job, and that makes you like their character even more. And that's honestly one of the issues when it comes to these WWE 24 or any of these documentaries, because it kind of like gives you, we said it gives you insight, but maybe it sometimes gives you too much insight, because it just makes you frustrated about WWE even more. Because here's the thing, we know it's wrestling, we know it's scripted, but it's like, we know that these people are probably angels outside of the wrestling industry. We know that, but it's like, just portray them right on television. Like, it seriously can't be that hard. And that's honestly where the face versus heel dynamic comes in. Because if you think about it, how about 9 out of 10 times a heel gets cheered these days because of what they do necessarily outside of the wrestling business and not what their character does in the ring?
Yeah, and that whole face heel dynamic, that's one of the things that it's flawed from its foundation, and I think that the whole system needs to be freaking overhauled these days, because what I'm seeing from, like, we're living in an age of television where you have characters like Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones, and he's done some crazy shit. I don't want to go all in case anybody plans on watching Game of Thrones, but that
trust me, you don't want to. You don't want to get into Game of Thrones, people. Trust me.
No, that show is freaking amazing. Okay, and not even just Game of Thrones, but you have shows like Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy. You have these people out there who they're seen as heroes, but they don't necessarily do heroic things. They're not cookie cutter good guys, and then on the other side of things, they're not cookie cutter bad guys either. And a perfect example of that would be Kingpin from Wilson Fisk from Daredevil. You watch Daredevil?
Oh yes, I go back and I watch comics, like the TV show, character crossover episodes, you name it.
And it was so amazing in the first season of Daredevil how you had a story arc, like a character arc, that involved the villain to get you to a point where you knew who this person was, you knew what his motivations were, and it wasn't all about, okay, we're going to do everything that we possibly can to make sure you hate this guy. It's that we're just going to create a character, we're going to present that character, we're going to give you a backstory on him, and then you feel however the hell you want to about him. And the problem that presents itself with Seth Rollins, WWE traded legitimate heat for fake pro wrestling bullshit, where Seth Rollins goes out there and he's more worried about having the crowd hate him and having the crowd react negatively to him than he is about getting the championship back. Like, that's honestly how I feel. Like, I feel like the character of Seth Rollins, his purpose is to get heat, not to achieve anything, not to become world champion, not to become the top guy in WWE, but to get heat. And when your character is transparent, so much so that I can say that, something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong.
But we also have to keep in mind too that 9 out of 10 times it's not Seth Rollins doing. It's mainly what WWE and the creative team is pretty much telling him to do. But still, it's like a situation where, as a person, you have to realize this, and you definitely have to take at least a bit of initiative, which is, Jay, you know me. I'm a Seth Rollins mark on this show. Like, I have not stemmed away from his character, not one bit. But it honestly, it does kill me, because it's like, the guy is awesome, but why can't we just get his character right in the middle of that ring? And why don't we just get away from the whole heel face dynamic? Like, why can't we just have a universe where if you like the person, then you like the person. If you don't like the person, you don't like the person. Like, don't do good guy things because you're a good guy. Do them because you feel it's right.
And I'll go back to that AJ Styles versus Roman Reigns feud. That was the perfect example of what I would want from WWE. Neither guy was a 100% good guy. Neither guy was a heel. To be quite honest, both of them were selfish assholes. But I'm fine with that, because in the real world, how often do you find, like, how many, we don't have these evildoers just walking around every fucking day, you know, in regular everyday life. Like, that simply does not exist. There are real people that in shades of good, shades of bad, and then when you get in times of desperation, sometimes you do something that you never even knew you were capable of. Like, that's what I want to see more of. More
realism.
WWE. Yeah,
basically more realism. Like I said, just don't do good things because you're the good guy, or don't necessarily do bad things because you're the bad guy. Just let people know who your character is, and if they like it, then they like it. If they dislike it, then they dislike it.
Yeah, and you would think that with as much history as Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns have with each other,
yes, they're better than this.
You know, this a feud like this would kind of write itself, but
yes, scripted too much.
Yeah,
it's scripted too much because right now it's being labeled as face Reigns versus heel Rollins, where they pretty much should just be two guys in our eyes as fans. Just have. We've seen the history. We've seen when Seth Rollins broke up the Shield. We've seen the rise of Seth Rollins. We've seen the rise of Roman Reigns. And after that, WWE 24, that should probably get the fans to get behind Rollins even more.
And
it's frustrating.
And I don't know. It's such a weird situation for me to sit here because I'm looking at this feud between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, and this is a feud that this is a match I really wanted to see, but WWE is doing everything in their power to. You want to see this match? Let's see.
For 2 years. For 2 years we've been trying to get this. Seriously, people. For 2 years we've been trying to get this, and now they're champions. It didn't happen. And even then, it happened on freaking free TV, which I actually need to go back and watch later. But yeah, we were supposed to get Night Champions. Didn't happen. We were supposed to get Last Jet Survivor Series. Didn't happen. They can actually use that to stem off the fact that this is a match that the fans have been waiting to see on pay-per-view for the first time ever. But they're not stemming back off that.
And then on the flip side of things, like this is the feud that I like talking about Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. This is a match that I really wanted to see, but WWE is doing everything in their power to reverse that. Then when you move down to NXT, if I'm being honest, when I heard that it was going to be Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor for the third time, well, actually fourth, but we didn't see the third one.
Oh, yes.
I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this match. I don't want to see it.
I don't blame you, but...
However,
after that sit down...
NXT, and... I'm loving it. They sold me. Like, that sit down, and I'm so glad that I took the time before I went on air here to watch that full episode of NXT, and amazing stuff.
It felt real.
Yes, two people sitting there having a real conversation, and you could tell that it wasn't scripted or anything like that. Of course, like, they went in knowing the history of their characters, and they just talked. They talked, and it was amazing.
And you know the funny thing is, Jay, I don't know if you've ever seen a UFC press conference. That's honestly what it felt like. It felt like an actual UFC conference because you can tell that there was legit heat there. You can, like you said, you just mentioned it. There was some history there that they both knew, and each one kind of came back, coming back with the other. Like you can probably tell that they probably weren't scripted. And let me just say, Corey Graves, for all those sit down interviews that Michael Cole does, how is Corey Graves not on the main roster on commentary? Because the way that he orchestrated that whole thing was just fantastic to me. Like I said, if you can feel the heat between the two, then that makes you get behind this feud, and that makes you want to see these guys kick the ever-living crap out of each other.
And then, what was one of the lines that said when Finn Balor was like, "You stabbed me in the back, Joe," and then Samoa Joe responded, "That was the only place I could stab you because you turned your back on me and walked away." I was
Great,
like,
fantastic.
These guys, like, it wasn't even just that. There was another segment that they had a few weeks ago on the show, and at that point, when I saw that, I was like, I'm sold. Like, I love the stripped down way that NXT does things. Like, they did a video on Facebook. A video on fucking Facebook of Samoa Joe and Finn Balor signing their contracts. And you can tell it wasn't overly produced or anything like that. It's just, yes, it was simple to the point, and it's just something about that I know, like, I was talking about fake pro wrestling bullshit with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Hell, this is pro wrestling too, and it's scripted, but it doesn't feel that way because you can tell that they the characters that these guys are playing, they have a stake in the development of those characters, and they're given it's like the creative team has faith in them. Well, this is the character that you're playing. Maybe if we let you go out there and don't overly produce you, you'll know what to do. You won't stand there and with like a deer in the fucking headlights. Like, that's the problem that we get on the main roster very frequently.
They get scripted too much.
I don't think that the creative team has enough faith in the wrestlers to freely explore the depths and the limits of who they're playing, like the characters on TV. Yeah,
but it's kind of a double-edged sword if you think about it, because it's like you do have those people. I mean, the wrestlers and the characters out there that are not very well done, do not do very well on the mic, and that's kind of where the scripting comes into play, because we know that's what they're there for. But still, if you don't have enough faith in your talent to actually like go out and like cut a promo, like seriously, we know if you can. Like, no superstar has not been able to go out and cut a good promo. Like, seriously, if you're not able to cut a good promo in the middle of that ring, then you can't be a superstar. And I think another thing we need to take away from that Samoa Joe, Finn Balor stare down is the fact that, like, I really like the setting of it.
Yes.
The setting of it, like, you could tell it doesn't need to be like in a huge crowd. It didn't need to be like in the middle of the ring with like Michael Cole standing and like asking him certain questions. It's not like one of those like Miz or like highlight reel segments that we get.
And that's what I love so much about that segment that they did when Raw was hit with that blizzard. And they had to change stuff up. They were like, oh, shit.
With Lesnar and Reigns?
Yes, and Paul Heyman. That was so amazing. And I don't understand. Like, I know WWE is pushed up against the wall, and I guarantee you, if they weren't, that segment would have never happened. Like, if Raw went about,
definitely.
You know, if it was regularly scheduled programming, that segment would have never happened. But I don't see how they didn't look at that and say, holy shit, we created some magic right there. Maybe we should do stuff like that more often. And we haven't seen anything like that on the main roster since. Everything is done in the ring, and they do have those sit-down interviews with Michael Cole, but those are only like one-on-one. Michael Cole talking to one person. Like, sometimes when you are in the ring doing things like that, and I read the most perfect description of this, sometimes the live crowd can rob you of the intimacy of that moment. And it's great in pro wrestling because there's not anything that exists like pro wrestling in the world where you get to go out there and perform in front of a live crowd and they interact and they play into the story and they could change the story as it goes. But sometimes that's not always necessary, and you could strike gold without it. And WWE did it with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. In NXT, they definitely did it with some Balor.
Yeah, especially like when you look at the crowd, like what they did on Monday with AJ Styles and John Cena. That was a big moment, but there's no reason that you should be giving the crowd like that much time, because you're focusing on the two superstars that are in the middle of the ring. That is John Cena and AJ Styles. And I get this. I think one of my favorite lines I think Joe said in that sit-down interview was like, you know, you can call it like a sense of entitlement, but really what it is, it's just confidence. Great freaking line. Now that is a real Samoan badass. Like, and you know what I kind of find funny? I hope people don't really think that this is Samoa Joe heel, because to me, this is who Joe's always been. And that's who Joe's always been.
That's the thing that they do well in NXT, because I remember when Sasha Banks was there, she rode a very fine line. Like, whether she was face or heel, that didn't matter. She was just a chick who knew she was a fucking boss, and anyone that needed to be bossed up on, she was gonna do it. Whether you were a good guy or a bad guy, or good gal, bad gal, hell, she'd do it to the guys too.
Yes.
I wouldn't put it past somebody like Sasha Banks, but I think that that's something that NXT gets so right, and I'm hoping that Ryan Ward down in NXT brings some of that magic to SmackDown. It's gonna need it.
Yeah, especially with the rumor that SmackDown could possibly be 3 hours.
Oh my God, where did you hear that? You need to burn that place down. Whoever sent that rumor out, go find them, burn that place
down. I wish.
No. I see. There's just some things like that. I don't know if there's enough magic in the world. We're gonna need fucking Harry Potter, the whole Order of the Phoenix.
Or better yet, get GD from Aladdin.
Man, Gandalf. He was magic, right? Was he a wizard? I don't know.
I think so. It's kind of hard because I've gone to Magic Quest at the beach so many times, but
we're gonna need everybody. The Dark Magician. From
that's definitely not gonna work.
Man, I don't know if Ryan Wood good.
Not even Dark Magician Girl is even gonna work.
Yeah, we can get her too. Get all of them together. But yeah, what else do we have to talk about? NXT TakeOver. Yes.
Oh, yes.
TakeOver is next week in Triple H. I don't know what kind of games you're playing out there, but giving
the end.
Yeah, the subtitle "The End" for TakeOver. I don't.
Where do we go? Where do we go from here? Yeah, like Jay, I told you this a couple of days ago on how like when I saw Triple H send that tweet out, I'm like, oh crap, like. This is terrifying me. My heart is racing. I'm like, are we going to lose this brand? And I'm like...
Yeah, because you don't know how this brand split on the main roster...
It's going to be affected by...
NXT.
Oh, NXT, they are going to be... And I guarantee you, once July 19th hits, they're going to be picking up the top guys from NXT very heavily because NXT will be affected by this, but I just don't see how from a business point of view they would get rid of that brand when I've done my research on this. It is one of the top shows watched on the network. It's one of the reasons why the network is successful. Not to mention when you go back and you look at the replay list, it's heavily when it comes to NXT. And also, they've just done way too much about expanding the brand from what it was from Arrival to TakeOver Dallas. Like, you just see the fan base. And if they would get rid of that, that just doesn't make any sense to me. But I think what the end honestly means, it's pretty much just going to be the end of, like, the current storylines that NXT has going right now. Like, the end of the Bálor Joe thing, the end of American Alpha and the Revival. And like the two upstarts. Like that,
I wouldn't put it past Triple H to do some shit like that because he has to know that when you put that out there, people were gonna think, "Oh shit, well we do have the brand split coming up," and so I wouldn't put it past Triple H to do something like that. That seems like it's right up the
yeah, especially like when you look at a Ticketmaster and NXT TakeOver Brooklyn was no longer in the ticket slots, but it turns out the event's still going on. They're just gonna like rebrand the logo and everything because it turns out like the way that the TakeOver thing name came about was the fact that how he gave the NXT developmental talents a chance to take over the network before WrestleMania 30. So now I guess with this brand extension they want to like expand from that and see like they're going with a legit new logo and a name change. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But we really won't know anything definitely until after the live events in July and after TakeOver next week.
Okay. Speaking of TakeOver next week, let's take a look at this card. We already pretty much talked about Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe, a cage match. I hate cage matches.
But I like the way they. I really like the way they built this one up. Like I really do like the way they built this one up.
Yeah, and once again, it could be some of that NXT magic coming into play because I really like what they did with the ladder match that they had. I think they've had 2 ladder matches in NXT.
And have you noticed that New Japan kind of does the same thing too? Like they don't do like they don't ever do gimmick matches. If you've seen New Japan, like they don't ever do gimmick matches, but when they do a gimmick match, it's usually for a big time purpose, and that's what NXT has been able to do. And I really like the fact when it comes to the steel cage stipulation, it's to protect the fans, not to keep Joe and Balor in.
Yes, that's another thing too, and that just adds so much storytelling and just an amazing narrative because we've seen them go nuts. Like that match
Yes.
they had at Dallas, that was some crazy stuff going on. And for them to, you know, twist it and spin it in a way that says, "Oh, we're putting these two guys in a cage to protect the fans."
Oh yeah,
that's great stuff. So I'm hoping that NXT continue, because NXT, they've shown a very stripped down approach. I talked about this a little earlier. When it comes to the way in which they approach characters, when it comes to the way in which they approach production and the matches themselves. So I'm hoping that that approach continues in this.
I got
match.
Joe
faith.
winning. I got Joe winning because I just don't see the point in Balor winning at this point.
Yeah,
especially with that brand split coming. What we got next?
American Alpha versus the Revival for the NXT Championship.
I'm a little iffy when it comes to this match because if you notice, since Dallas, they haven't really been on NXT television as much, and I think.
Are you saying like they're like phasing them out?
Well, I don't think they're not phasing them out. I feel as if they just don't have a program for them right now. Like, here's the thing, because I don't know if you heard, but when they did the tapings, they actually did the rematch on TV. And I was thinking to myself, why would they do that? Because they could get away with the rematch of the next TakeOver special. So that match is not even going to air, but we'll actually get the match next week. But I will say, though, yeah, like I said, I don't think they're phasing them out. I really think they're just like, they just don't have a program for them right now. And this is just a way to get them through. But I do like the way that the Revival has been shown on NXT. Like, seriously, they just feel like a legit tag team. And people, you know my love of tag team wrestling. And if I can get behind a team that actually truly emphasizes on what they care about in their division, then that's a team I'm going to get behind, whether they're a face or a heel. And these guys have been trying some different stuff on live events. Like, I've heard they've had some good matches one night, not a decent match the next night. So they're trying different stuff to figure each other out. But I got American Alpha winning this because as much as I like the Revival, I want to see Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano take on American Alpha in Brooklyn, and that could be sick.
Yeah, speaking of them, it was kind of interesting that they
won
the pin over the Revival.
At least, yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think the reason why they did that is because, like, here's the thing. You have to establish other teams for American Alpha. And this is one of the issues that I was thinking about when Alpha won the championships. Like, they pretty much beaten everybody. You have to have competition for them when they do become champions. So the division doesn't get phased out. And I think they're able to get away with that with Ciampa and Gargano winning. But at least the Revival got some heat after the matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that everything that they've been doing with them is smart because we've seen them over the last few weeks. They've been attacking tag teams and they've been establishing.
And they do dominance. They do it. Yes. And like, here's the thing: how many times in wrestling have we seen like a wrestler talk what they're gonna do, but they don't do it for like 2 weeks? When the Revival said when they were gonna put the tag team division on us, we're gonna beat down every team that one night. About 15 minutes later, after the Hype Bros won, they came right back out and you protect the freaking characters.
Yes, and what was I about to say about them? Like, I think it was Corey Graves or maybe it was Tom Phillips. They were talking about how them losing to Tommaso
derails them.
And, yeah, it derails them, and it was like embarrassing too, like that. And you have to imagine, like, with them thinking that they're on the level of the tag team championships and to be beaten by somebody who's not even in contention for the titles quite yet, and them beating you could possibly put them in contention. That had to like drive them crazy, and hell, it did. We saw it on the show. They attacked Ciampa and Gargano. So I've been liking the feud and the way in which this is building up. I'm going to go with American Alpha here too. I haven't seen enough of them as champions, and I know they have something waiting in store for us here.
Especially with that new team like T61.
I'm not.
You don't sound big on these guys.
You mean Will-O-Wisp?
Yeah.
Yeah, them. If you guys are Pokemon fans, you'll get that. But yeah, I don't know. I'll see. I'm not sold on them quite yet. Yeah. I've heard that they're like good.
That's a heel tag team right there. That's a heel tag team.
they have a nice reputation like before they came to NXT. So I don't know. I gotta wait and see. Not so quite yet. But continuing on with NXT TakeOver, we have Shinsuke Nakamura versus Austin Aries.
Oh, the indie boner! I'm gonna be getting. This is gonna be fantastic.
I mean, Nakamura's in this match. Okay, so I mean, do we really have to say whether we are excited for this or not?
I'm excited. I think the way that they've been featuring Nakamura in like the main events, like in the main event of NXT over the last couple weeks, and did you see the episode, the one where he had his first match in Full Sail? The way that the crowd went nuts. Didn't I tell you like the fact that like it felt like he just re-debuted because that was the first time that he got seen. That's the effect that Nakamura has when it comes to wrestling fans. And Austin Aries, you can tell they actually are kind of phasing him out because I think if he in NXT, he's kind of like that upper mid card level, if that makes sense. But I honestly have Nakamura winning. It'll be interesting to see if Aries wins because I think Aries is actually the next challenger for Joe when we get to Brooklyn.
See, I didn't even envision any kind of scenario where Nakamura would lose this match. But with Austin Aries, like, I'm glad that they're starting a storyline with him trying to grab the spotlight in NXT because what he's saying pretty much is true. You know, he doesn't really have a place there quite yet. You have a lot of guys who are going in there, they're burning up the charts, they're doing a lot of big things, they're making a splash. Austin Aries has yet to really make a splash on the roster. And with all of the fanfare that surrounded Nakamura coming to NXT, like you would think that the character of Austin Aries would feel some type of way about that. So the way in which this match was made, good stuff. Like I really like it. It feels natural. It feels real.
Can we just say that William Regal is probably at the top of the best general managers in history?
Yes, because he just goes out there, he does his fucking job, and then he pieces out. Like that's it. He's not trying to get himself over. Not like browbeating anyone, talking down to anyone. Just he comes out there when an authority is needed. He makes a decision and boom.
And he's neutral, very neutral.
Yeah, he's not doing this thing. Oh, because you're a bad guy.
Yes.
Then I'm gonna be shitty to you. If you do bad things,
you get consequences.
Yes, there are consequences to you when you do bad things. But it's not like, oh, let me look at this sheet of paper. Oh, you're a heel, so I got to be an asshole to you. I got to do bad. No, it's not any of that.
Yeah. So you got Nakamura winning?
Yeah.
I do too.
Okay, we have another match here. Andrade, Cien, Almas versus Todd Dillinger, who we are both excited about. He got a win.
Can we just say, how the heck does this guy not have a T-shirt on NXT shop right now? Like seriously, how does he not have a T-shirt?
Because he's just an enhancement guy.
But honestly,
really fucking good.
Yes, like very underrated. Honestly, if he went to the main roster, I honestly think he would fit perfectly still in this role. Like he's just that good. And let's just say, I think while we're on the subject of enhancement time, real quick, I think Elijah Sampson has been underrated too. Like he's kind of like what Tyler Breeze was before he left. Like he's like the guy that welcomes the newer stars. And I think Elijah Sampson and Todd Dillinger, they are actually perfect in that role. And as far as this new up and comer, like what's his name again?
Andrade Cien Almas.
I saw him. He looked familiar in the Performance Center videos. I mean, what's his say? He's pretty much going to beat Todd Dillinger in his debut. So
holy shit, this guy is younger than I am.
CJ, it's not too late.
I was born October 19th, 1989. He was born November 3rd, 1989. See, this is like this whole man. This is something else.
Believe me, the age thing doesn't work.
No, it's so weird because I remember growing up looking at people like The Rock and looking and I'm like, oh my god, like this, like I wouldn't necessarily say like a father figure or anything like that, but like a role model in a sense. This was, I was a kid and this guy was so awesome and he was great and he was all of these things, and it's like I'm getting older But all of these new people are coming in, and the roster recycles itself and things like that. And now we're at a point where people in NXT are younger than I am, man.
Yeah, that's weird. Ty Dillinger. I honestly wish that he was like up there when it comes to like the NXT 5, because he's honestly getting there for me. Because like I said, did you watch the match that he had with Aries a couple weeks ago?
Yep.
He was perfect in that match.
See, the thing is with people like Ty Dillinger, though, you sometimes it doesn't matter how good they are.
Yeah.
If that's the role that they're going to serve, then hell, it just like reinforces the decision why they're there. Because you can get into the ring, you can put Ty Dillinger in the ring with anyone, and he'll pull a good match out of him. Not saying that the other person is a scrub, but just Ty Dillinger is a great opponent if you want to make somebody look good, and it's a blessing and a curse in a way.
And Elijah Sampson, he's good in that role too, because like I said, I think that's what they're trying to like mold him into.
Okay, I'm going with, and this guy's previous name was La Sombra.
La Sombra, I got him too, because people always win their debut matches at these takeover specials.
Okay, and the final match that we have here is Asuka defending her NXT Women's Championship versus Nia Jax.
Can I just say how fantastic that contract signing was on NXT? People, that is how you do a contract signing in the main event segment of a show.
And Nia Jax kept her word. Remember last week she told her, if you ever get this close to me again, I'm going to drop you where you stand. Oh, my God. I love that line. I love it.
Yes, like, I just feel as if, like, when I watched that, I just felt like Nia Jax, unlike the match that she had with Bayley and how she became #1 contender, that triple threat match featuring Nia Jax, Alexa Bliss, and Carmella, for as green as all three of those women are in the main event scene of NXT, they pulled off a fun match. They pulled off a really fun match. The way Nia Jax won, I liked. And like I said, I just feel Nia Jax has just been more comfortable in this one. Like you can tell. Like, I buy her as a contender now than I did the first time.
Yeah, that match that she had with Bayley for the championship, didn't like that match at all. Because I could tell that it was more about her size than it was. It's like, okay, you're big, so you're just gonna get by. It's like they just looked in the crowd and said, "Oh, hey, that's a big person. Yeah, let's take them and put them in the ring." She didn't know what the hell she was doing. She wasn't in touch with her character at all. But now I feel as if she's getting a whole hell of a lot more comfortable in her role and her size. And when she does a move, like
it's impactful.
Yeah, it's impactful because anybody could go in there and like physically do the movement of a body slam. I've never wrestled a day in my damn life. I've
done backyard wrestling.
Like, I've never been trained in wrestling. I can get into the ring and physically do a body slam. It's gonna look like shit, but I can physically do it.
Yeah, it looked like the Michinoku driver.
That's what I felt like for Nia Jax back then at that point. Like, she could physically do the moves, but there was nothing impactful about them. I feel it now.
And the way she took the mic from William Regal was fantastic. Just proving that she's that dominant figure in the ring, because that's what Nia Jax pretty much didn't have, was the dominant factor. Yeah. Like, when she comes out, you need to have a presence about yourself. You need to make people, yes, she's feminist, but you need to have people fear you in the middle of that ring. And, like, she has just got it down pat. And Asuka, do we even need to say about Asuka how fantastic she was?
I love her.
The way she spoke in Japanese in, like, 2 seconds quick?
She said, like, 900 words in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
I didn't know what she said, but I know, like, if I was her opponent, I'd be scared.
And you know what's funny when it comes to New Japan, it's almost like with the commentary team, you don't really necessarily have to get the Japanese commentary if you can get what the story's being told in the match and you know what they're fighting for, then you can just get into the match right there. It's like with the promo. You may not know what it means, but if you know it's impactful enough to the point to where it's gonna scare the adversary, then it's gonna work.
Yeah, you knew she was pissed off, and you knew she was telling Nia Jax some way, I'm gonna kick your ass.
And Nia Jax dropped her on her beyond, which should have happened. And they just signed the contract and just walked off. And again, it wasn't in front of a big audience. It was actually, even though it was featured in a big deal on Raw, it was featured in a major deal on NXT because this was a first-time matchup. Not like a rematch from like another pay-per-view that we saw with a bullshit finish.
So, yeah, and I do have to say, though, Nia Jax, she's come a long way. She still has a ways to go.
Yeah.
But my whole thing, criticize unnecessary, give credit where credit is due. I see the improvement. Work it, sister. Even though I think you're, getting the brakes beat off of you.
Like, seriously, this is also going to be like Gail Kim versus Awesome Call from TNA. I'm actually going to go to that point because I think Asuka could carry, and I know it sounds weird, but I think Asuka could take Nia Jax to a good match.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too, because we thought Bayley and Nia Jax were going to have a good match, and look what happened.
No, I didn't, because I was not on the Nia Jax. I couldn't stand her back then. I was really nervous about that one. But I'm a little more comfortable.
Like I said, she feels like a legit contender now, like a legit threat. But I honestly, unfortunately, I have Asuka winning because I just don't. Actually, here's the thing: I don't even see neither women getting pinned, or not even tapping out.
Where are you going with that?
I just honestly don't see, because here's the thing, you can have these are just two imposing women because of the way that their characters have been built up on NXT to the point to where I feel as if they've been built up too strong. Because think about it, you build up Nia Jax like this for months and months and months, and here's the thing, keep in mind, Jay, remember in London when they had that stare down? Remember like a couple weeks ago when they were out of Full Sail? They had another stare down. Yep. I feel as if they built this up way too much for either woman to get pinned, and it can get away with it. But if I had to pick, like I said, if someone gets pinned, it's gonna be Nia Jax. But I just don't see a clean finish here.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess we'll see what happens with that one. Next week, NXT TakeOver. Looks like it's going to be a good show. We'll see where it goes from there.
You can say that again for this brand entirely. It scares the crap out of me.
A question that I have for you that I see it's blowing up on the interwebs. Have you heard anything about this whole situation that's going on with Ricochet and Will Ospreay?
Oh, yes. Oh yes, because I don't know if you like Vader's comments. Like here's the thing. It's probably like that New Japan Super Juniors tournament. It was
before we I have to give people a little bit of insight of what's going on. So Will Ospreay and Ricochet, also known as Prince Puma from TNA, they had this match.
What company?
It was
Lucha Underground.
Yes, Lucha Underground. But
that's what I thought.
The match that they had, it was in New Japan, the Super Juniors.
Yeah, the Super Juniors tournament going on right now.
And the match was like there was a spot in the match where they were basically.
It was spot fest.
If you ever heard the term flippy shit.
It was a lot of it. Like shit, like there was a lot of it.
The term flippy shit would say that this is the perfect example of flippy shit. Like if you scrolled over to a dictionary. There will be a GIF of this match in there next to the phrase "flippy shit." Yeah,
yes, but
flippy shit is in the dictionary now.
Did you see the match?
I did not see the match. I watched
it.
A minute or two of that exchange, and basically the wrestling world has gone insane because there are so many people out there saying that things like this ruin pro wrestling.
There was no selling, like no selling as much.
You throw on this stuff that's going on with Joey Ryan and him and his penis power.
Don't even get me started with that.
Then you throw on like the Young Bucks,
the Super Kick Party.
Yeah, Super Kick Party, and you know all of the crazy, weird, zany antics that they're involved in. And there are people that are accusing these people of like killing pro wrestling because it's like a campiness that's attached to everything that's going on. But back to what happened with Will Ospreay and Ricochet, I think William Regal put it perfectly. He said that, you know, all of these debates are raging about, but at the end of the day, we do have to consider the fact that the people who were in attendance at the show, the people who paid for their tickets, they were excited, they were satisfied, and the people who paid to see them got what they came for. They got their money's worth. Now, with that being said, I will say that I don't disparage their right to do that. However, even though I agree with what William Regal said, the position that I'm in, where he says the people who paid for it got their money's worth, the problem with me is that I wouldn't pay to see that. Like, if I knew that that was on the ticket, if that was on the card, like stuff like that, I wouldn't pay to see it because it's just not my thing. Like, you can do it, and the people who want to see it, fine, but it's just not my thing at all.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, I watched the full match, and I will say, from my perspective, I thought it was a fantastic match. But Vader, actually, I don't know if you saw Vader's comments on it. He pretty much said just a bunch of no selling, and I do agree with him that on that sense. But we have to keep in mind that he's from a different era of wrestling, like where all of this wasn't back when he was on, like, when you got hit with a big move or got dropped on your head, you would sell that. But like what Ricochet and Will Ospreay did, they pretty much just did a lot of. They did do some flippy shit for about 10 minutes, and then they did, but for like the last 15, I think it was like a 22-minute match at best, but they actually did get down to the nitty-gritty because it was like they would hit an impactful, like, here's the thing, there was a spot where Ricochet, he actually did like a little bit of a front flip into like a DDT on Will Ospreay, and then Will Ospreay, he was like back up in like about 10 seconds.
See, with me, I like and this is why it drives me crazy when I hear people talk about Roman Reigns and I hear the "you can't wrestle" chants and the bullshit like that, because there are different styles of wrestling. Not everything is about, you know, flips and the technical acumen and things like that. And that's one of the reasons why people chant "you can't wrestle," because it sounds more intelligent from their perspective than "you can't flip," because that's Roman Reigns can't flip. He doesn't do any 450 splashes and shit like that, and that's why people, you know, talk trash about him and what he can do in the ring. But I like people I like a variety, actually. I like people like Neville, who can get in there and they can do the flips and things like that. I like people like Kofi Kingston and AJ Styles, who can get in there and they're very agile and things like that. And people like Roman Reigns, too, who have a very, like, a moveset from a power standpoint. And it's very impactful. And you could see the pain and things like that. I like that. And I tend to like things that where it's
flow.
Like, yeah, it's touched in a bit of realism, not to the point where you're just going out there and you're doing moves for the sake of having people go ooh and ah, because I watched
because that's what gymnastics for.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's acrobatics, it's gymnastics and shit like that. Like, I watched some of the moves that Ospreay and Ricochet did, and
it was crazy. Yeah, like these were kind of, I think they did a C4. Like, I think Will Ospreay did a C4 on Ricochet when he was coming off the ropes. I think that was one.
There was one where I think it was Ricochet who dived to the outside, and he did this crazy, like, flip and all of these contortions and shit like that, and he flew over the damn back of Will Ospreay. grazed them, and the crowd is going wild. And
which is fine.
Like,
but,
okay, well, what if he wasn't standing there? Like, what?
Yeah.
What if the whole match was them just taking turns in the ring, doing flips to the outside and dives and shit like that? Like, do you even need somebody to stand there for you to be amazed by it, or do you just like the illusion? Like, you don't even care that he didn't hit him or didn't even look like he hit him at all. You're just like, oh my god, that was a 450.
Because it's funny because it's like, like I said, it goes back to the whole like we know wrestling is scripted, but it's like when they do all the flips and kicks and stuff like that, all it takes is a wrestler standing there just about a minute, and you already know what the other guy's probably gonna do to him. Like you can tell that he was actually like setting up for it. Like you could see it coming from a mile away instead of it being like, oh man, he really did not know that was gonna happen to him. But like, I'll give the NJ. I'll give you a perfect example. Remember when we saw when we watched Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens at Payback a couple weeks ago?
I did not see that match.
You didn't see it? Oh yeah, you were on the way on business for anybody out there wondering. But yes, but when I watched that, this is a perfect example. What Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens did in that match compared to what Ricochet and Will Ospreay did, I would give them a 7, and I would give Will Ospreay and Ricochet a 10. That's pretty much that's pretty much the best comparison I could come up with, because if you can tell, like in the Sami Zayn Owens match, yes, they did some like interesting flippy acrobatics too, but it was like they immediately got up like about like 5 seconds afterwards, whereas like when it came to like Will Ospreay and Ricochet, you can tell that it was timed right. You can tell like each other knew what the other wanted to do, and like to make sure that the move is executed right.
And tying this all into WWE, was it this week or was it the previous week? No, it was last week where Apollo Crews was attacked backstage by Sheamus.
Oh, yes, and he no-sold the shit out of it.
Didn't sell it one fucking bit in the match that he had later on in the night.
And Jay, you know what's funny? I think I guarantee you that was probably a pre-taped interview done during the day, and somebody probably forgot to tell Apollo, like, you gotta sell this because you got attacked from behind. So I honestly think that might have happened.
Well, here's the thing. I actually heard a podcast from, who was it? Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez. They were talking about how that's actually policy in WWE to not sell things like that, because and there was also talk about Dean Ambrose, because the night before at Extreme Rules, he was he got the shit kicked out of him, and there was a lot of crazy stuff going on in that Asylum match. And I've noticed this has actually been a trend in WWE. You'll have people in these extreme matches on a pay-per-view.
They'll get hurt.
Wrestling. Yeah, they'll get hurt and stuff like that, but they're back to wrestling the next night on Raw. And Dean Ambrose is infamous for shit like this. He's always some kind of crazy injury going on with him that he rarely sells in a match. Well, it was said by Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez on the podcast that this is actually policy in WWE, because they care less about selling and more about someone going out in the ring and performing their stuff. Because you have to imagine, like, if you see Apollo Crews and you know what he's capable of, you don't care about the fact that he got his ass beat backstage.
Right.
You want to see him out there doing the flips and doing all of his moves. So I guess it's a situation where it's like WWE understands that, or are assuming that the fans care less about storytelling than they do the spots. And
no, that no, it's definitely not that case. Because here's the thing, like,
I don't know. There are a lot of people out there like
they do. Like, here's the thing, they don't care about storytelling.
The two of us, we're not those people. But there are people out there that don't give a rat's ass about storytelling. All they want to do is see people go out there and hit their spots, and that's it. And I hate that. I really do, because I make note of it every goddamn time it happens. Because the situation with Dean Ambrose, he goes out to the ring and he's having his match, and JBL is out there talking about, oh yeah, Dean Ambrose has got to be feeling pain, he's got to be feeling hurt, and Dean Ambrose like ran and did a fucking full-on sprint after that, and then JBL is like, oh well, he must be hurting on the inside. What the fuck does that even mean? Hurting on
it pretty much doesn't mean anything. Because here's the thing: if you have no story in the match, then if you have like no like, here's the thing. I told Lucas this a couple weeks ago, and I called this out on him too. When he was like, I want to get to the here and now. I want to, like, get to the match. And I told him this, then you pretty much have forgotten the purpose of wrestling.
Yeah. It's all about telling stories. It's all about, you know, and it's wonderful. Like, everybody wants to see the spots and things like that. But maybe, because I think about this quite often. There are a lot of folks out there who they are such purists when it comes to wrestling that anything that may interfere with the wrestling portion of it, they get offended and they get like territorial and things like that. And the crazy part about that to me is that, like, I love wrestling. Hell, I've devoted an entire website. I've devoted many hours of my day to wrestling, but wrestling is not my only interest.
And he underpays his staff.
I like storytelling. Like, that was something that I was interested in before wrestling, and it's something that made me more interested in wrestling, and I value that in wrestling. Like wrestling is not just about wrestling to me. It's about characters. It's about development. It's about the, you know, this fictional world and the way in which it evolves and things like that. But there are some people, they don't give a damn about anything beyond the wrestling itself, and that's kind of crazy to me.
But Jay, here's the thing, and I agree with everything you said. But if you look at ROH right now, if you look at ROH and companies like that, they can actually get away with not telling stories in some of those matches, because it's like you just said, like, there are people that just pretty much just care about the match because they are targeted to a more hardcore traditionalist type wrestling fans, whereas when we get to the WWE, you have the half of the hardcore traditional fans, and then you have the casuals. I always use the word casuals because casual fans don't usually tune in to Monday Night Raw for the wrestling. They tune in mainly because for them, watching that is a soap opera. Watching that for them is like seeing, okay, why am I supposed to like this person? Well, they're fine. Like, they can do all their matches, but I really want to know see what happens next week.
Yeah, you got to get people to a point where they care about the wrestling, and you do that through telling stories. And
now we could just tell Lucas that we begin somewhere.
And I guess we've come full circle now. We started off with Seth Rollins and them not picking up on the stories. We've talked about some of the successes, some of the failures in WWE, NXT, and the wrestling world as a whole. So, anything... I guess we can head off air now. Anything to say before we head off?
Nah, I had an awesome time, man.
Me too. This was a lot of fun. This was. Alright, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you later. Peace.
Later days.